Lego, you are an amazing dog. This is Lego's roadmap to success. Legalos, I should say. But we've become buddies, so I can use the short name, shortened version of the name. So basically, I think the issues that are going on here to some nation is he's very under-exercised. He didn't have any real rules and structure, and he was able to tell his guardians when to give him attention or pet him. And so I think that it kind of created a little bit of a petulant dog, a little bit of a dog that thinks it needs to be in charge of us and thinks that we need to be protected. And so I think all those things have also contributed to him being a little bit stressed out. That was a cute look, buddy. And just like us, we're not going to perform very well when we're overstressed. So I started off by talking about the guardians keeping an exercise journal. So basically it's just keeping a spiral notebook, writing the day at the top, and then write the time and how many up-downs we did on the stairs, which is a creative exercise that I gave the guardians. The time and how much we played, how many fetches we did out here. The time and how long the walk was. The time and how long you chase the laser. Remember also to look up scent games on Google. That's a great way to drain some energy. And then if there's an issue where like he barks at the door, or he barks at squirrels, or gets rambunctious, or whatever it is, write that stuff down as well, and also write down the times that he poops, and not pees but poops. And then at the end of the day, give a letter grade, A through F. And then the next day, play around. Add a couple more repetitions to the games of fetch, or the up-downs, or an extra walk, or whatever it is. And keep on doing that until eventually he gives you a letter A grade. I'm going to keep you here for the shot, buddy. And then now we know how much exercise we need him to get. Your average dog there we go, I thought that was the case. Your average dog needs about 45 minutes of exercise a day. I think he's probably getting close to half of that right now. And so I think if we can just up that exercise, that's really going to help. It's not going to fix the problems, it's going to make fixing the problems much easier. And also write down the poops because he has some potty training issues as well. That's one of the things we talked about, didn't we? So I come up with a new word I asked the guardians what the word was for potty, and they're like, don't have one, or maybe potty. Come up with a word that's creative, like Putin or whatever you want. And then take him outside to the area for a week on leash at the times he needs a potty. Now remember, the 3 times the dog's most likely need to go. Right after waking up, 5 minutes after eating, and 15 minutes after the start of heavy playtime. So he gets the zoomies, look at your clock, and within 15 minutes, make sure you take him outside. Now what I would do is take him outside, probably to where, the far side of the yard, probably over there where you have the little art thing, I don't know what that is. But take him over there on leash and have a treat. As soon as he starts to pee or poop, say the word business or Putin or whatever it is. And then just say it in a normal tone of voice. A lot of times they're like, Putin! And you get the dog, it'll stop the dog from eliminating. So say it in a normal, calm tone of voice, and within 3 seconds of him starting. When he finishes, pop a treat in his mouth and say the word again right after the treat goes in the mouth. Always say the word after the treat goes in the mouth. And then basically do that for a week. So you bring him out on a leash at certain times when you know he needs a potty. Then what we do is the second week, we take him out off leash and we walk to the same area, but this time we have 5 of the high value training treats that I have. And if he potties anywhere in that circular area that he had access to with a leash, we give him 5 treats and we say Hannity or whatever the word is that we use for his potty word. Now if he goes anywhere on the grass, you might actually give him 5 treats, but I would try to get him to do it. This is usually what I do if I'm teaching the dog to go do a specific part of the area, over the lawn. But a part of the time he potties here on the concrete or right next to the door, especially during the winter, and the guardians have problems with getting him potty unless he's out here with them. So teaching him to go over there and give him a reward anytime he just goes on the grass will probably be achieving the same thing. Now the insecurity and not being wanting to be left alone, you look very happy, is probably because he doesn't practice being alone. And the video above this about teaching him to stay should help with that problem. But basically, the more that we reward him and come up with a new command word, the more that we can make it, give him an incentive to want to go to potty out here as opposed to going inside. Now, he also likes to bark like crazy when he hears the door. So one of the things I had the guardians do was a little desensitization. Every time that he was just chilling and not hanging out and not looking, we reached and knocked on the wall a couple times. Try to do this when he's not in the room, he's not in the room with you. Now he barked and rushed the door. He did that several times, but the last couple times we did it, he didn't bark once. And so we do this at times when nobody's coming through the door, so we break that association. Now, I also showed the guardians how to claim the door. Now, I haven't done this exercise in a while. Usually I like to use classical conditioning and teach the dog to run away from the door when the doorbell rings, but the doorbell here is a very unique sound. It wasn't working. So I showed the guardians how to march towards him and keep him out of the doorway. I would have the guardians practice when they come home, park in the driveway and walk up to the front door and text each other so you know who it is, and then practice knocking on the door like a regular guest so you can move him away the way that I showed you. And if you forget how to do that, message me. I have videos where I can show you, where I'll show you how to do that. And now we're helping him practice being several feet away from the door when we open it, and then when the person does come through, it's somebody I already know. And it's after you're doing that enough, then eventually he will just start staying behind that invisible line. I'd also like the guardian to use the same approach for putting a couple pieces of tape down on the floor in the kitchen and the dining room as I showed you, and that way you can enforce that and make him go stay on that side of the line. I'm going to explain how to do that here in a second. When you do that, I like to get like a piece of bacon or roast beef, microwave it, then put it on the table and pretend like we're all sitting down to eat dinner. And then if he comes close, we stop what we're doing and we go correct him using the third consequence, which I'm going to go over here with you here in a second. And we basically are practicing helping him stay behind the invisible line while it looks like we're eating. We're not actually eating, we're just cutting up the roast beef or whatever and simulating a meal. Once the dog lays down behind the line, then we put the bacon or the roast beef away, and then we serve our actual meal. We just did a warm-up. You do the same thing when you're cooking in the kitchen. Microwave a piece of roast beef, put it on the counter, and that smell is going to make it smell like we're cooking. Then simulate turning on the stove and knocking some pots and pans around, open the fridge, open some drawers, and every time he tries to come in, we stop, we address it, we march him out, and then we walk away from him in that very measured way backwards, so our hips are pointed and our belly button is facing the dog. And after the point where he sits or lies down or moves away, then we actually put the stuff away and we do our actual cooking. When you're cooking, you're thinking about the ingredients, the order, and stirring and all those things, and then the dog comes in, you don't see it right away. Remember, you have 3 seconds to correct or reward the dog for them to have the ability to make the connection, but it has to be repeated consistently over and over again. So for the rules, make sure you're not breaking those rules. You're enforcing them for a minimum of a month, if not longer than a month. Now, how to enforce the invisible boundaries and how to disagree with the dog. Normally I don't go over this in a video, but I'm kind of sneaking one in here. So I practice what I call escalating consequences. I don't punish dogs. I don't believe in, they don't learn very well from punitive measures or being reprimanded verbally and things like that. What I do is through through body language and a specific sound. So I have 4 of these. The very first thing I do is I make a hissing sound like a cat, like this. Well, he froze for a second. I have 10 versions of it. I have a level 1 hiss, which is like it's. I have a level 10 hiss, which is like, see if I get a response this time. Pretty relaxed, but I like doing that instead of saying the word no, because the word no is the 51st most commonly used word in the English language, and we use it so often when we're not directed at the dog. A lot of times dogs learn to ignore it, and we say it multiple times. So I hiss as my way of saying no, don't do that, or most effectively, don't even think about doing that. So if we're at the kitchen table, we're practicing, we have the roast beef that's been microwaved, we pretend like we're eating, he's approaching the line. When he's about a foot away from it, I would hiss at him. If you hiss with the right timing and the right energy, you need to match his energy to be slightly higher than it. If he's level 4 energy, hiss at him level 5 or at 4. Don't go under because he won't respect it. And usually they'll turn around and go do the opposite direction. So that's the first thing. Only hiss 1 time per incident, and 3 little hisses does not make a medium hiss, so don't go tss. Just do 1. Yes. The second escalating consequence I have is I abruptly stand up. Standing up is your business position to a dog. And burning energy also indicates I'm serious about it. Your what do you call it? Authority goes whatever direction your belly button is pointing. So imagine there's a beam coming out of your belly button. So once I stand up, usually the dog will take a step backwards. When it does, what you want to do is, and then it's going to, well, the step backwards is just to say, well, now you're in action position, I'm going to give myself some escapability. Then I'm going to determine, are you talking to me or did you just get stung in the butt by a bee? So as a dog, I'm going to walk over here. The dog walks over there, but you keep your authority and your belly button pointed at me, the dog literally walks away from your authority. So when the dog moves around, pivot and keep that dog in front of your belly button without moving your feet until the dog stands, sits, or lies down. When it stops moving, that's its way of saying, I'm done challenging you. When it says, I'm done challenging you, you want to acknowledge that, and you do that by taking 2 steps backwards. And when I say 2 steps, I mean left, right, and stop. Most people take several steps. They take a left, right, shuffle, 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 put their hands on their hips. That looks like they're meandering. Dogs communicate through movement and through body language. When they communicate through movement, it's one big, singular, over-dramatic movement. So when you're taking 2 steps backwards, it's 2 movements, but it's 2 feet. So left foot, right foot, and then pause for a second, keeping your hips pointed at the dog. When you pause for a second, that's your way of almost putting a period at the end of the sentence. Then you can go back to doing what you're doing. However, If you sit down, you're going to lose some perceived authority. So if you're sitting in the couch, don't sit deeply in the couch, sit on the edge of the couch, because you're probably going to have to bounce back up and repeat that step. That's the second escalating consequence. Standing up abruptly, turning to face the dog, keep the dog in front of you until it stands, sits, or lies down. Take 2 steps backwards and pause for 1 second. Then go back to doing what you're doing. The third escalating consequence involves giving and taking space. For dogs, front-facing, like I'm doing right now, is confrontational. Sideways is approachable. Behind us, we're defenseless. One thing I like the guardians get in the habit of doing is not moving around him. If he's sitting or if he's lying down, you can walk around him. But if he's standing, don't walk around him, walk through him. Create a choreography so that he understands when a human's coming, my job as a follower is to get out of their way. Sometimes where he's a little guy, we're not going to see him, we're going to be carrying something and accidentally step on him or bump into him, and we try to be nice by going around him, but then it confuses him and think he has more authority than he does, and also he expects that from us, and the time we don't see him, we're going to hurt him. And because he only has 3 legs, we want to give him an advantage and just get him practiced at moving out of the human's way, especially for the kids, because he nips at the kids a little bit when he's playing. Remind me about the mouthing, and I'm going to go over that as well. But, so the third consequence is we march deliberately directly at the dog, and suddenly keep marching at the dog. Now, if the dog backs up a mile but still facing you, it's still challenging. When the dog wants to say, I understand what's going on, it's going to turn sideways to you or greater. As soon as the dog turns sideways, freeze. Remember, 3 seconds to start or stop. So you want to stop immediately. And at that point, I go to the second consequence. Now I'm pivoting as the dog moves around the room. Dog sees me and stops. I take 2 steps backwards, pause for 1 second, then go back to what I'm doing. The only time when you're marching at the dog needs to think, if I'm still here when the human gets here, the human is running me over, which is why I talked about not moving around the dog and walking through them. Now, the only time this doesn't count is if the dog's in designated no dog zone. So we talked about making the kitchen off limits when we're cooking. Well, if I march at the dog and the dog's in the kitchen, but it's not on the right side of the line, and it turns sideways, I would keep on bumping into it until it crosses the line. And that I stop enforcing it where the line is. This is how we enforce an invisible boundary. Now, we did the same thing with the tile and claiming at the door. So it's the same principle. But have suddenness in your step. Don't slow down and stop before you get to the dog, because then he's going to stop moving away. And the whole point of moving towards him rapidly is to get him to move away. As soon as he turns sideways, we stop. That's basically, I have a fourth consequence. So I basically put the dog on a leash, and I step on the leash, and I wait for the dog to lay down before I let him off the leash. That's the fourth consequence. So those are the things you want to use. Always start with your hiss, then go to standing up, then marching, and then leash. After a while, it'll be stand, march, leash, or hiss, stand, march. You won't need to use the leash. Then hiss, stand, then eventually just be hiss. I can get my dog to drop a live squirrel out of his mouth with just a hiss, but he knows that I'm going to follow through and get my way. Now, earlier in he mouths and nips at the kids a little bit in a playful way. Earlier, the guardian, he was kind of doing a little bit of, well, he doesn't want to do it with me, but he was kind of chewing on the guardian's fingers a little bit, and he was playing with him a little bit. Dogs need to develop what we call bite inhibition. So what I would say is anytime his teeth touch you, even if it's accidental, we yelp like a little girl. And freeze for a second, and then go back to doing what you're doing. This is how dogs communicate with each other, that was too hard. But you want to use that yelp like that and freeze, and then go back to it. If he gets really rambunctious, he keeps on jumping up, a lot of times that means they're tired and they need a nap. But we want to understand, if I just put my teeth on a human, they're just so fragile, they just wilt like ice cream in the summer. We want to understand that that's not something you could do under any way, shape, or form. They sample things with their mouth, we taste good, especially when we're sweaty, but with the kid, they're running and he nips at the wrong time, or he's mouthing a kid and the kid doesn't understand, he pulls away and slaps at the dog, that can create a bad situation. I also went over petting with a purpose and passive training. Petting with a purpose is what it sounds like. If the dog comes up, he was climbing up on top of his guardians. We're talking about rules here in a second. But if he just climbs on top of me, that's an indication that he does not respect me as an authority figure. If I invite him on my lap, that's different. That's why I told you to sit down. This is a long video. So instead, when he nudges at you, paws at you, jumps up at you, barks at you, tell him to sit. When he sits, pet him under his chin and say exclusively the word sit. Don't say good sit or sit. Yeah. That drawn out sound will get their attention, but it also is confusing. It's a different version of the command. And then you can pet him at that point for 5 minutes. Even if you just want to pet him, still tell him to sit. Pet him under his chin to start off with. Never pat him on top of the head. Dogs' heads go down like that when you pet on top of the head. Proud dogs have their nose in the air. Insecure dogs have their head down. So patting them here creates a down nose orientation. Patting them here creates a nose up. So what we're saying is if you want some attention in the human, you have to do something to change your state. You have to sit, lay down, come, whatever it is. After a while, the dog will come and start sitting in front of you to prepay for attention. When he does that, make sure we do recognize, pet him under his chin and say sit or come or whatever it is. And I also use the word paycheck. So if you come in the room, see someone's petting the dog, he's standing up, say paycheck, that person has to stop petting, tell him to sit or do something else, and then pet him and say whatever the command word is. After a while, what will happen is he will start coming and sitting in front of you to prepay for attention. When he does, make sure you recognize that, otherwise he'll stop doing it. I also went over passive training, which is waiting for the dog to organically offer good behaviors and rewarding them. So if he comes and sits down next to you, pet him and say come or sit. If he lays down, pet him and say crash. If he goes to his kennel, say the name of the kennel. If he goes to the dog bed, throw a treat, or say the name of the dog bed. It's the same thing we do with kids, and this way we're teaching him these are the things we want you to do. Right now he's getting attention for doing the things the guardians do not want him to do. So the more we pet with a purpose and passive train, if we get in the habit of doing that, every time we pet your dog, it becomes a mini micro dog training session that we do without even thinking about it. Now, some of the rules we went over, he's breaking one rule now, but we haven't started it yet, is not lying on the furniture. The higher a dog sits, the more rank or social status they have, so that's the way the dog can see you as a peer. But he also likes to get on the furniture and on the tables to look outside the windows because he's practicing that guard dog thing. So one of the things I talked to the guardians about was doing what we call maintenance, taking paper, just white paper, and putting it at the bottom corner of all these windows and the doors, so when he goes on the table or the furniture, he can't see out. That will help him practice not getting up there. Now, I usually recommend X mats, which are foldable deals that have little plastic spikes on them that keep dogs off the furniture. We do that for a month or two, and he gets out of the habit of doing that. Then we can kind of back off and doing those quite as often. And for the table, the kitchen table or the dining room table, you might want to tape, what was I saying? Not saran wrap, tinfoil on some of the chairs that you don't use. That will prevent him from going there, and then put the X mats on the other ones. That should help with the counter surfing and the rest of that stuff. Let me see. Some of the other rules, not being allowed out the door unless he sits first. Go to the door, say sit. If he doesn't sit, within about 3 seconds, walk away. Wait 1 minute, then go back to the door and give him the command again. If he doesn't do it this time, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 8 minutes, keep doubling the length of time you wait before you give him another opportunity. Unless it's a potty training thing. Potty training should supersede this. And then eventually he'll just start going to the door and sitting down as his way of indicating, I'd like to go outside. He shouldn't be in the kitchen when we're preparing food. Shouldn't be within 7 feet of anybody who's eating. And should have to sit before or wait for the humans to go through the doorway first if they are going first. Now he also has some dog aggression. Now I'm thinking part of this might be territorial, part of it might be terrier, part of it might be insecurity. I'm hopeful that the things that we've gone over in this session will help mitigate that or stop it altogether. If not, then give me a call. We'll set up a 1-hour training session and do some behavior adjustment training. I'll have one of my people come with me with a dog that we can control. We'll go to a park somewhere, and I'll show you how I can practice and teach him to be calm and balanced and practice being around another dog without reacting to him. In the meantime, look for ways to get him out of trouble. So if you're maybe walk him, there's a field nearby. I would try to walk him there if possible, so that way if a dog appears, we can move away. If he's reacting, the best thing you can do is increase the distance between him and the dog. Sometimes you have to move around a car or shrub or something to get him to stop doing it. Now, you also might want to teach him to focus. We didn't have time to go through that in today's session, but that might be something we focus on. We teach him at a follow-up session if we set one up. All right, what do you say, Lego? For the kids, make sure you do the chocolate thing. I went over a reward system for the kids to earn chocolate by petting with the purpose and passive training, make them sit at the door and things like that. And also, we're going to incorporate dog beds into all the rooms of the house. And the guardians should make sure you practice the technique that I showed you to teach them to go to the dog bed. And each dog bed should have a different designation. Practice with each one of those so you can eventually say, Shire, and he goes over to one dog bed, or we could say, I can't think of the wrestling names from Lord of the Rings, but whatever it is for the other dog bed, so you can actually command him to go there. That's when you kind of back off and leave him the treats there. But also one last thing is the dog bed and the kennel should be free zones from the kids. So if he goes in his kennel, the kids should not be allowed to go and interact with him. So that way he has a safe place that he can go if he's fed up with the kids, it's too busy, I have a safe place to go. Right now he goes to the closet in the guardian's bedroom. I would recommend getting a small kennel for the bedroom and then getting a cover for it because I think that will make him feel a little more comfortable. Get a wire one, don't get a plastic one. And then when you put that in there, do the same thing I showed you with the dog bed and the kennel up here, but also close that door, the closet door, so you're blocking his access to go in there. That's a little bit more maintenance. I also went over the importance of feeding him after the humans eat. Dogs eat in the order of their rank, so just by eating something in 5 bites, then giving him permission to eat, should go a long ways towards helping him respect them. There's a whole lot of little things we went over in the session that I'm probably not covering here. If you forget any of those or have questions of any of those, please call me or text me if I don't hear from you. I assume that means everything's going well. It should be about a month, and you should be seeing a noticeable improvement if you're doing these things. Except for if you're seeing improvements everywhere else, except for on the walks when other dogs are around. Like I said, let us know at that point, and we'll schedule a bat training. I'm usually booked for about 1 to 3 months in advance, so please don't wait if you want to do that. We can do that on the weekend for you guys. It works better for your schedule. All right, well, this is Legalos, or Lego, and this is his roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.